What's up, guys? I'm the Senator, and this time we're going to dive into the controversy around the latest change coming to Siege, and that is that the devs are switching from 2 new operators per season to only 1. And I'm going to explain my thoughts on it and how I actually think it can benefit the game in the long run. But before we get into that, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you'll be notified every time I post. Also, make sure to go check out my Twitch and Instagram. The links for that will be down below in the description. So anyways, let's hop right into it. For those of you who don't know, Ubisoft announced that after Year 5 Season 2, Rainbow Six will go to only releasing 1 op per season for the rest of Year 5 and throughout Year 6. And we could probably expect this to be the new norm going forward. And everyone's initial response is one of disappointment, but I'm going to go into why this change could actually benefit the game in the long run if it is executed properly. But before I dive too deep into the topic, I'm going to start by saying that these are just my personal opinions. I'm known to be a retard from time to time, and you may have a different one, and that's okay. And I'm not saying that my way is right and yours is wrong, but I am saying that there are fair arguments both for and against this change. I'm just presenting my argument as to why this would be a good change. Okay, so I've noticed a pattern in how new operators go once they've been released. A new operator will be released, and we'll play the operator for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then most of us never touch those operators again. And we give the operators a fair shot, and then eventually we go back to playing whoever we main. And a good example of that would be the operators that came out of Phantom Sight, Nock, and Warden. We used them for a few weeks, but we never really touched them again. And yes, there are a few players that would pick up those ops and use them regularly, but most of us, we didn't touch Warden or Nock ever again. The same thing can be said with this latest season of Wama and Kali. These operators are used more than we saw Nock or Warden being used, but it's still pretty rare that we see them used. Most people would rather pick a Jaeger over a Wama for obvious reasons, and a lot of people will only use Kali if a Thatcher has been banned, and even then most people would rather pick a Twitch or an IQ instead. And you may be thinking, Senator, you're just exaggerating, people use these ops all the time. Well, the pick rate and win delta chart shows otherwise. So many new operators hug the left side of the chart and are picked less than 20% of the time. And when looking at the ops from this past year, the only ops that seemed to be really successful was Mozzie. So Ubisoft is releasing 2 new operators a season, but the thing is they're rarely used. Of course, there are some ops like Mozzie that break through and become part of the meta, or Goyo, which is used a lot in Pro League. But I think it's fair that of the 2 ops that are released each season, one typically suffers and the other one will do just okay. And so I think that Ubisoft has noticed this trend, and that they are devoting time and resources to releasing 2 new ops every season, only to have one op not really be used and the other one to have a very minimal impact. Of course, there are some ops that they release that stand out, but generally when they're released, they have a minimal impact or aren't used very much. And so instead of them using their resources to develop these 2 ops, they should be using the resources somewhere else to improve the game with bug fixes, map reworks, or even reworking operators like what we're going to see with Tachanka. And now, the biggest downfall I see with Ubisoft going in this direction is that some players may not be as excited to hop back on the game if they're just seeing minor bug fixes instead of seeing all these new operators and a new map come out. And that's understandable from a very casual player point of view. But instead of trying to get the people to come back to the game with new content, I think they're trying to keep players in the game by making actual changes that make the game as a whole better. When you think about it, new operators don't really have an impact on every single player, especially when those operators aren't really picked. And yes, I'm referring to Warden, obviously. And so you can look at Operation Phantom Sight and notice that other than the cafe rework, the season really had no impact on anyone. The devs devoted their time to releasing these 2 ops that receive very little to no playtime. Nox is seen from time to time, and especially in the Pro League. Warden never really seen at all. And so now with this change, they don't have to spend all their time trying to release 2 ops that receive minimal playtime and don't really affect the game as a whole. Now they can make changes like the new map ban that's coming out, visual changes, better map reworks, operator reworks, and things that have a bigger impact on the game rather than just releasing 2 new ops. And so you can look at Wama as an example. Wama will really only affect players who play Wama. Other than that, he's really no much different than a Jaeger. Other than, he can take Ying Candles, which still go off, take tracks and air jabs. but just overall, it's a very, very minimal impact that he has on the game when you compare him to like a Jaeger, which is usually used instead. And so I think when looking at the game as a whole, you can classify Siege players into 4 different categories. People that hop on every now and then to check out what's new, the players that'll hop on multiple times a week and just, play a casual match, people that like to play daily like me, who like to try to play competitively and rank, and then you have the professional pro league players. And so out of those 4 different types of players, the only ones that I feel will be really affected are those players that really don't care and that they just hop on to see what's new. Those super casual players will only care about the big changes like new maps or new ops, whereas other players will experience changes that affect them every game and will make a noticeable difference in their experience, and they'll have a better time playing the game. And I kind of hope that makes sense to y'all. So overall, I know that it sucks that we're not getting 2 new ops per season, and believe me, I love seeing new operators in the game, even if they're not used as much as the devs intended. And it does make the game more interesting. But we need to realize that they're running a company, and while they do have a lot of resources, the resources are limited and they are constrained by time restraints, since they have this season set up like every 3 or 4 months that they have to release something big. And I, as a player who loves the game, would rather see the game move in a direction that focuses on making the game better for everyone, and devoting resources to just minor changes and 2 new operators won't really make the game any better. With this shift in how Ubisoft is going to manage their resources, instead of just focusing on making 2 ops and a new map, we're now going to see operators get completely reworked like Tushonka. We're going to start seeing map bans this next season. We're going to see better map reworks overall. We're going to see maps that aren't even going to be in the ranked pool that are getting reworked to help those casual players who don't really care about ranked. Like the house rework, for example. They have no intention of putting that in ranked, but yet they're still going to rework it. We're going to get different game modes like what we're going to see in the arcade playlist. All these things make the game better and will extend the lifespan of the game. And if that means no new maps and only 1 operator per season, I'm okay with that. We have plenty of maps. They just need to focus on making the maps we have better. But you may have a different opinion, and you may see the new operators as the thing that makes the game interesting, and that's fine. But I see this change as a step to make the game better. I know we're not crazy about this idea right now, but I think, looking back 2 years from now, we're going to notice this change as something that made the game extremely better because the devs were able to devote more time to making the game better instead of just adding new stuff. So what do you think? Am I wrong? Will the lack of 2 ops and new maps cause a decline in Siege players, or will it actually just increase the quality of life changes and make the game better for everyone and hopefully keep players playing it longer? So what do you think? Am I wrong? Will the lack of 2 ops and new maps cause the decline in Siege players, or will it actually increase the quality of life changes to make the game better in the long run? And so let me down below. I love hearing from you guys. You can also contact me through Instagram at ZSenator. And so that about does it for today. And as always, have a good one.